Hi, and welcome back for part 2 of our DVD where we go over all of the tools. All the tools that you see listed here are tools that we will individually go over in much greater detail. And I would suggest now that you print out a copy of all the charts to make it easier to read and make notes. Unlike the presentation charts that we've covered in the earlier part of the DVD, some of the tools we have prepared for you are very detailed, and we'll cover the highlights of each one now. The very first tool is called Getting Started Checklist. Checklist is the first step on the path of your supplier management journey. In step 1, the journey begins with an external view as you identify and profile all your major suppliers. Then the focus moves internally. In step 2, you start by stepping back and looking at your company's organizational structure and identify all of the key internal stakeholders. We then move into the development of your supplier management infrastructure using the tools referenced in Step 3. Step 4 is important and the final internal step as you successfully build your business case. Step 5 moves you back into the external view with one-on-one meetings with your suppliers. As you do, Step 6 allows you to create an overview and evaluate each supplier. The process becomes even more interesting now as you move into Step 7, in which you complete the data mapping and supplier integration opportunities. You may at this point want to go back to update your business case because you will have learned a great deal more than you did in the initial profile information. Finally, in Step 8, you develop relationships and drive your supplier summits and workshops. The next tool that we will profile together is a supplier identification and profile tool. The first column in this tool separates HR into its typical functional areas. For each HR functional area, we have listed typical suppliers in the next column. For each supplier, we suggest you list name, whether the supplier uses any third parties to complete the work, the administrative service only fee, planned spend, number of employee touch points via either the phone, web, and also the total, contract expiration date, and whether you have good performance guarantees in place. This initial information will help you determine where you have gaps to fill and how to best prioritize your efforts, as you'll not be able to take all of this on at one time. That's just too overwhelming. But let's just get started. Also, don't be concerned that you have a lot of gaps. I don't know of anyone, and I mean anyone, who can fill all this in the first time. In the Supplier Management Roadmap tool, the vision and segments of the roadmap were covered in the presentation in Part 1 of the DVD. You may remember we covered the top 5 elements at a very high level. This chart contains much greater detail for each segment comprising the roadmap. These details will help you think through what makes sense for your organization as you create your own roadmap. Thinking through these details will help you determine goals and objectives and a multi-year strategy to see your supplier management organization come to life. It'll also help you in making your business case to leadership. In the Role Definitions tool, this lists several different stakeholder roles in the left column that may exist in your company and/or that you may work with routinely. For each role, using the legend at the bottom, begin to think about involvement in each area that goes across the top row. You may consider doing this as a current state, then repeat as a future state. Another suggestion is to use this as a conversation device when you meet with each key stakeholder. I've always found this tool useful in determining how well aligned we may be to the key stakeholders. In the Supplier Management Accountability Matrix, this matrix goes much deeper than the Role Definition tool. Strategy and execution are added to the segments described in the Supplier Management Roadmap in the left column. For each segment of the process, activities are listed, and you must determine who has the lead and also the support accountability. We're now building on the information from earlier tools and getting more clarity on the stakeholder roles for your company. Again, looking at this as current, then future state may be helpful to separate the two views. We prepared a sample HR supplier management job description as a tool. Your team may need resources to develop the accountabilities that fall to your team as agreed on with your key stakeholders. This job description will be a good start for thinking through the needs that exist for your company.
I'm Dr. Thomas Perry, President of the Integrated Benefits Institute. IBI is a national not-for-profit organization supported by more than 550 corporate sponsors. Employers comprise about 85% of our members. IBI's mission is to do the research that points the way to new approaches to managing health and productivity, provide the measurement and modeling tools to help employers get there, and facilitate forums that promote the exchange of new ideas and experience. Historically, employers have organized their health-related benefits programs in independent silos. Healthcare in one place, often with pharmacy benefits, EAP programs, and wellness activities as separate carve-outs. Disability programs typically are provided by a separate corporate entity, and workers' compensation often delivered in yet another part of the organization. Other types of health-related worker absences often haven't been managed at all. In support of this benefit structure, employers have turned to the market for best-in-class vendors in each of these separate benefits programs, typically with a goal of controlling individual program costs. The result is often a patchwork quilt of loosely fitted programs held together with fraying thread. But as every employer knows, these programs often target the very same people. In the words of one employee, "When my company carves programs out, I feel like I'm being carved up." It is this perspective that is leading many employers to take a more holistic and integrated approach to managing the health and productivity of their workforce. They desire to integrate their health, absence, and disability-related programs with a more focused strategy. As employers move in this direction, they can't help but turn to the marketplace and ask, how can I get my vendors to follow me in this more integrated approach? We'll address this question in today's program through a conversation with Chris McSwain. In his work, first at SCANA and then at Whirlpool, Chris has led the way in developing innovative strategies that transform vendors into true business partners. He will discuss how those two organizations have been able to coordinate their vendor efforts to improve the health and productivity of the workforce. This DVD has two parts. The first is a discussion of key strategies and how to better coordinate vendor programs and activities. The second is an overview of the tools that can help in this transformation. These tools can be downloaded directly from this DVD. Before we begin, I'd like to thank Chris for taking the time to share his experiences with us today. I'd also like to thank Johnson & Johnson Healthcare Systems for their generous financial support of this program. We hope you enjoy it. Chris, thanks for joining us. When we started IBI 15 years ago, there were at least half a dozen suppliers that provided everything: group health, disability, workers' comp, behavioral health. Now there are none. In your role in managing the benefit function, supplier management must be a key part in your job. So what guides you in the way you approach supplier management, and what are your beliefs about that?
Well, Tom, it's going to be great to discuss this with you today. Really my personal mission is to invent success every day to help before it hurts. I really think that describes most employers and our suppliers as well. I think we all want to do good by our employees while we're doing good business. But this provides a challenge for us to always want and need to improve that I think drives most teams to want to pierce the veil of the status quo. And really we have to be successful because incremental improvement, I think, is a fatal strategy and frankly just not good enough. Disrupting through innovation is a key way that employers in particular can drive breakthrough results and high performance levels. And I think that's one of the reasons why supplier management is so important, is because it's one of those things that employers can do. It's within their control to really drive those breakthrough results and high performance level. I know personally that supplier management can change lives and drive business success, which I think is an important mission for everybody to achieve. Although supplier management is core to our total health and productivity strategies as an employer, unfortunately it's not a core competency of many of the benefits teams that I know of. Now, I've been fortunate to be a part of two benefit teams that have made a great deal of progress in our supplier management strategies, and I'm thrilled to have the opportunity to tell you a little bit more about that and share with you and our audience more about why supplier management is important and